Good morning, everybody. Welcome in. It is game day, baby. Eagles Week 2 game, Monday Night Football versus the Atlanta Falcons is here. It's a Monday morning, September 16th, and the Eagles will kick off at 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Monday morning, brother?
Getting ready. Game day, Birds
Yeah, it is.
365. So that's exciting.
Yeah, man. We start with 2 game days, Johnny Mac, on Birds. Normally they're Sundays, so you don't have a Birds 365 on the
Yeah,
game.
not with this team normally. I think we're going to have to say typically. Yeah, a little bit jokingly, but yeah, the crazy schedules with this team.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're 1-0, so let's see how they handle the rest of it. But they won't have a normal week, a typical NFL week till after the New Orleans game next week. So kind of strange.
Yeah, they're going to be in a little bit of a different scheduling with the Friday game, and then the Monday game, and then their Sunday, and then they have another short week. So it'll be interesting to see how everything breaks in. Johnny Mac, the big news came down yesterday. We're gonna preview the game here in the open. Obviously, I'm sure everybody consumed a lot of NFL football yesterday, a lot of good football on the TV yesterday. A lot of interesting football. If you're an Eagles fan, you watch the NFC East Crappy Bowl with the Giants and the Commanders,
Oh man.
and then you watch the Dallas Cowboys get absolutely destroyed by the New Orleans Saints. So we'll talk a little bit about that later in the show. I want to welcome and
Yeah,
thank
there's good
everybody.
news, bad news there. If you
Yeah,
think about it.
because you're playing the Saints, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. That's gonna John. I'll give you credit, man, because you called that earlier in the offseason, and I'm like, I'm gonna give the Eagles a win over the Saints, and you're like, that's a good team. That they got a good defense. So you kind of called that. And Derek Carr is playing good football right now. So we'll break more of that game down later in the show. But John, let's get to the big news here. AJ Brown is out for the game tonight. For those who missed the news yesterday, AJ Brown is nursing a hamstring injury. He tweaked it on Friday, was the official word from the team. John, what do you know about the hamstring injury, and what's your initial thoughts on how this changes the game tonight for the Eagles?
Well, it changes it. I mean, it's pretty evident. People have already seen this team. Think about that the offense in 2021 versus the offense when AJ got here in 2022. And then think about last year when he got hurt against the New York Giants and into the playoffs. Not the same team when he's not on the field, which is understandable. You're talking about one of the best 5 receivers in football or somewhere in that range, certainly on the cusp of it. Um, and I would say he's the best, as I say all the time, the best pure football player on the Philadelphia Eagles. But so anytime you lose your best player, it's not good, and it's got to change things. And everybody bumps up. And I think Devontae Smith is one of the best number 2 wide receivers. But I go back to Green Bay when Jordy Nelson was an all-pro receiver and he got hurt one year. And the Packers, that was the Aaron Rodgers Packers at their height when they were so explosive. And he was the guy. He was number 1. And then all of a sudden, when he went out, Randall Cobb at the time was one of the best number 2 receivers in football. He had to bump up, and everybody behind him had to bump up, and it just wasn't the same. Similar situation here. They're better equipped with Jahan Dotson than they were prior to Jahan Dotson. We talked about this all off season. If you thought about projecting, Johnny Wilson to have to play major snaps or Anaya Smith as a rookie having to play major snaps, it just it didn't look good. So Howie understandably saw that and went out and got Jahan Dotson. Probably overpaid a little bit for him, to be honest, but you see the value already. One of the concerns is it happened later in the week too. So
Right, you weren't prepping for it.
no, exactly. So your game plan day is Tuesday, basically, when you install the game plan. Well, you got to scrap the game plan. Because as Nick Sirianni talked about, as he said, he gets frustrated now. He talked about it on Saturday when he was when he was asked a bunch of questions about Jahan because it was evident that he might have a bigger role, might have to play. And he was explaining again, look, the offense, the passing offense runs through A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and everybody else kind of gets the rest, anything that's left over, so to speak. But you're not really game planning for them. You're not really game planning to get them involved. It's they're role players. They're complementary players. They're not. I always go back to the NBA. You got to pick up the garbage. You got to get a rebound. You got to
Right.
your own thing. You're not running plays for them. So now you have to run plays for Jahan Dotson. He's got to be the third guy. He's got to get involved. And you weren't prepared for that. So, this is an early test for Kellen Moore. Now you got to get involved. You got to get him involved. You don't have your best player to rely on. So, it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
No doubt. You think Jahan Dotson, John, is equipped? I mean, you mentioned maybe you overpay for it, but you see the value. Well, technically, we haven't really seen the value yet because we don't know how good the player is going to be here. I mean, we haven't seen he didn't have any catches, obviously, in week 1, which is fine when you're talking about AJ and Devontae and Saquon and all those assets. But, what have you seen from Jahan Dotson? Is he going to be able to live up to this task of being the wide receiver too, of having plays called for him? Are we in good hands with Jahan Dotson, or is it all speculation?
Well, you're in better hands than you were before, so that's how I look at it. You're in better hands, but we don't know. I mean, he didn't succeed in Washington to the point of expectations. Obviously, it's the 16th overall pick, and so we don't know. But he's got talent. And if you think about last year with Olamide Zaccheaus and Quez Watkins and Julio Jones at the end of his career, in theory, he's better than that. He's certainly better than, once Devontae Parker retired and people were trying to talk themselves into, well, maybe Johnny Wilson can do this. Maybe Aniyah Smith can do that. Certainly a better option than that. But if is he going to be a big difference maker? I haven't seen that in the NFL at this stage. Now, Washington's not a very good team. We know all the issues down there, so maybe this is a better situation. But that was the question.
Right.
The question was, and I pulled it up. Generally speaking, that third wide receiver has been in flux since you got here, which Nick kind of backed up on because the third wide receiver role is complimentary. But anyway, he said he felt good with the guys who have been here. Everybody played their role, and that's where he went to. It's unfair to the third guy. And he said this is where he went. And he's like, the pass game runs through AJ, Devontae. I don't know how many times I've said the same thing over and over again. The pass game runs through Devontae, AJ, and Dallas. The pass game runs through Devontae, AJ, and Dallas. Sometimes that third guy gets unfairly judged because he doesn't have the opportunities that other people get. And that's what I think a lot of people just can't understand for whatever reason. So now he's elevated, and now he's got to be involved. Now he's one of the trio, and he's got to be involved to a certain degree. And it's difficult for Kellen Moore because he wasn't prepping for it on Tuesday. And it's difficult for Jahan Dotson because he's not typically placed in that role. And it's difficult for everybody else. It's not easy. If it were easy to replace players like A.J. Brown, everybody would sleep. Right. So many people got so upset with me on Twitter, like, pointing out that this is a big deal. Like, it's not a big deal. Which way do you want it? Do you want me to? Do you want me to say he's not your best player? He is, and you don't just roll out of bed and replace your best player. You do. You persevere. Hopefully.
Yeah, and it's not an easy thing to do when you got a guy like A.J. Brown, no doubt. So you're definitely not wrong on that. John, I'll tell you what I feel good about and then what I have concerns about. You talk about everybody stepping up in the rotation. Devontae becomes the number 1. Dallas Goedert presumably becomes the number 2. Jahan Dotson's the wide receiver 2, but probably the third option. I feel pretty good about Devontae Smith being the number 1. I think we're well equipped in terms of him being a number one wide receiver versus, you brought up the Green Bay example. Maybe Randall Cobb was just a better two. Some people are better twos than they are ones. I feel good about Devontae being a one. After that, I got concerns. Can Dallas Goedert handle a bigger load at number two? Can Jahan Dotson handle the wide receiver three or the wide receiver two, but the third option, I think, in the passing game? What does this mean for Saquon Barkley? We talked about limiting him after all those touches in week one. I don't think it's going to happen now. So that's what I feel good about with Smitty. But everything else, I got concerns about. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, from the standpoint of Atlanta, and they've a defensive-minded head coach who's done a very good job over the years in Raheem Morris. And if I hear that news, I'm immediately shifting as well. A little bit of an easier shift than Kellen Moore,
Right.
and now I'm trying to shut down. I'm trying to shut down Saquon first and foremost. And maybe that was the case, and maybe that's what he was game planning for. We don't know, but now I'm putting 8 people in the box, and I'm saying, all right, you're not going to run the ball on me, and I'm going to put AJ Terrell on Devontae Smith. So the domino effect, the weakness of Atlanta was that second and third corner, Mike Hughes and their nickel back, and that's where, Kellen Moore used DeMonte over 50% of the time in the slot, by far a career high
Right.
in week one. That's what he wants to do. Now he can't do it as much.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Or if he can do it if he wants to do it the same, then you have Dotson outside, whomever else they're going to play. If they're going to elevate Paris Campbell, they're probably going to have to make a roster move to get everybody they need up on the roster today, because they need Nick Yates. They need probably EJ Jenkins and Paris Campbell. You got Dotson and Campbell outside. Does that scare you?
Doesn't scare me. I don't think it's going to scare the Falcons either, which is why I think, look, Dallas Goedert is going to have a big game tonight. I think he's going to be a target. I mean, I think they are pretty well equipped maybe to cover him, but if you get him in some favorable matchups, maybe versus some linebackers, I think he could be a tough thing for them to cover tonight. How big of a role you think he has tonight?
Yeah, I mean, Dallas is big, as you said. He's going to be the second guy, as he has been in the past, before Devontae sort of took off. It's funny to hear Nick at the beginning. It would be AJ and Dallas and Devontae, and now sometimes he slips and it's Devontae, AJ, and Dallas, because Devontae's really taken off. But those are the three guys, and yeah, I mean, he's much of a bigger constant than Jahan Dotson. So yeah. I don't know. If certain people are down on Dallas Goedert for whatever reason, the Eagles aren't, and he's a big deal. And yeah, he'll have to be a much bigger deal in tonight's game.
No doubt about it. I'm gonna go to two. We got two good chats I want to go to, but first I want to ask you, John, how does this affect Jalen Hurts? He's coming off a night where he had 2 interceptions. Talked about a couple other bad decisions he made that didn't ultimately cost him, bad throws that could have been intercepted. Now he loses his number one man, AJ Brown, who Jalen likes. Jalen targets him a lot, even when he's not always open, because he's just that good of a receiver. Not knocking Jalen for doing that, but now you lose him. Now you have, what does this mean for Jalen coming into the game tonight? Definitely tougher sledding for him as well.
Yeah. But I mean, Jalen's got to focus on clean operation. Right. I mean, that's what Jalen's got to focus on.
AKA don't turn the ball over.
Exactly. I mean, and that was if AJ's out there. And if that's, you give up a little bit in the explosiveness category, you're probably giving that up anyway. I mean, AJ had a 67-yard touchdown last week.
Over Jair Alexander, who's one of the better cornerbacks in the league.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, to me, Jalen Hurts, and that's with AJ Brown, without AJ Brown, with Devontae Smith. If you lose at Devontae Smith, God forbid, clean operation. And by that I mean I'm not looking at the box score at the end of the game and looking at 2 interceptions. I mean, turnover worthy throws. Don't give them opportunities. I mean, that kind of stuff. Because if somebody drops a pick six, that's not good for the quarterback in evaluation. You don't just cross your fingers and hope somebody drops a pick six. So to me, that's what Jalen Hurts has got to get back to, ball security, because this is bleeding into year 2 now. And I said all off season I wasn't worried about Jalen Hurts. For all those who think I'm picking on Jalen Hurts because they want to protect the quarterback, I said all off season, this guy has typically kept good care of the football, and I think it'll revert back to the mean. Well, now it's bleeding over into year 2 from one game.
So the
Better
mean is
stop it
shifting.
quickly.
Yeah.
Better stop it quickly.
Yeah, the mean is shifting if he continues to turn the ball over. You think anything that has to do with just the way that the style of his play has changed? I mean, early in his career, there's a lot of RPO. There's a lot of him in control. He's almost in a little bit more of a pro-style offense now where he's throwing the ball more. Do you think that has a lot to do with it, the turnovers?
Maybe in week 1, and if it is, that's not positive. There were so many uncharacteristic throws against the Packers. You hope it's just an element of first game, no playing in the preseason, all that kind of stuff, limited practice time, yada, yada, yada. And September's the new preseason, all that. You hope it's just that. And as he catches up, you hope it goes back to a more normal situation. But like I said, as his history as a starting quarterback, so this is 2021 when he was okay, and then 2022 when he was almost MVP of the league, all the way to last year in the disappointing slide. Never had a game where he had that many passes where he put the offense in peril in that entire time. And that's not positive.
Not at all, John. One last question. I'm going to get to some super chats. I do want to thank everybody in the chat right now. We got a great crowd. As always, appreciate everybody on Birds 365 right now. Make sure you guys hit that like button if you're enjoying the show. Thank you all. Get some of your comments in a little bit. We have an open hour 1 here, and then we'll have Ed Kratz in hour number 2 to preview the game. So we got a great show planned for everybody. And we also will talk about some of the NFL football that went on yesterday. I see everybody. How about them Cowboys? I see them all in the chat. So we'll get to them a little bit later on. But, John, I want to ask you about Saquon Barkley now. He's, I think, the last piece of the puzzle that this, in my opinion, affects a lot. Will he be a bigger role in the passing game? Not in your opinion. Do you think he's a bigger role in the running game? Do you think there's no limits on what he can be tonight? What does this mean for Saquon Barkley?
The passing game. I just read Nick's comments.
No, I know, but
I wrote no running back. No running back is going to be a big part of the passing game at a volume standpoint, unless everybody's playing their safeties and unless that envelops in the game itself, and everybody's playing their safeties in the parking lot, and you're just dumping it off and jumping it off and dumping it off and dumping it off. The occasional play will be called for Saquon Barkley, very similar to what I was saying, the complementary aspect of it. I mentioned to you when we were talking about it over the weekend, he caught 2 passes last week.
Yeah.
He had 2 targets last week. He caught them both. He made an impact. That's what you're looking for. Impact when the opportunity is there, not volume. Impact when the opportunity is there. DeAndre Swift had 39 receptions last year. Well, guess what? If Saquon goes 17 games healthy, gets targeted 2 times a game, that's 34.
Yeah. It's 2 to 3 times a game.
It's not, and he won't. He'll get targeted more because the game will go that way. But again, as long as the impact is there, But no, he's not getting bumped up into the third role that Nick talks about. Running backs, and again, if you look around the league, you saw some, and you'll see some nice things from Bijan Robinson tonight on the other side, maybe more than Saquon, because Kirk Cousins is not healthy, no matter what they say, and they might be feeling like they need to dump it off a bunch. And Kirk's, quick to check down anyway, and take what the defense gives them. So you might get to see it. Um, you know, Christian's hurt right now. Aaron Jones, you got to see it a little bit, although he fumbled. Fred Warner, by the way, what a player. I
Holy
digress.
mackerel, he played great yesterday.
But he was taking that in for a touchdown if you saw that play.
Yeah, I saw it.
That's the kind of receiver he is in the passing game. That's nobody's that player doesn't exist. It's sort of like linebackers and coverage.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. But I guess then my question to you would be: you talk about the opportunity and taking advantage of the opportunity. It's not about volume. Does the opportunities increase tonight because there's no AJ Brown on the field?
Oh, definitely from the running game perspective. I think the Eagles will lean much more heavily, at least plan on leaning much more heavily. But, that's a back and forth. I assume Raheem Morris, that's his thought too, that they're going to try to lean much more heavily on Saquon. So they're probably going to try to take that away. And that's the chess match back and forth. And maybe Devontae and Dallas and even Jahan Dotson can get some things going in the passing game. So that's the chess match. But I think going in, I think the Eagles probably have ramped up the thought process of maybe Saquon's got to get more involved, especially early. That maybe
I
they
think
had planned.
Kenny Gainwell as well could be even a bigger role in the running game tonight, just because you want to, offset some of those carries probably, and you might rely on the running game a little bit more than normal tonight.
Yeah, and that depends on success early. Obviously,
Right.
if they're not having success running it, and always, I say all the time, tell me what the score is in the fourth quarter. So for the run pass ratio people,
Yeah.
that depends on who's winning in the fourth quarter. And if the Eagles are winning, you'll like it. If they're losing, you're probably not going to like it.
Yeah, so we'll see how they respond. John, Kellen Moore, you talked about him. He probably had a whirlwind of a weekend learning that AJ went down on Friday with a hamstring tweak. He had to revamp a lot of this game plan when you lose a guy like AJ Brown. What do you think he went through his head this weekend, and how is he preparing to respond to this tonight?
Well, he's been around for a while, both as a player and a coach. So this is not the first time I'm sure this has happened to him. This happens all the time in the NFL. And that's sort of how you handle these things, how you persevere through these things defines good teams versus average teams versus bad teams. Obviously, bad teams generally don't have players like AJ Brown. So, I mean, it's part of it. And that's the thing. I mean, I think, players get hurt in practice all the time. Happened to Jordan Mailata a couple years ago where he missed a couple games after he got hurt in practice. So, they're out there practicing, despite that reporters can't watch it. And it's a difficult sport. It happens, and happens all the time around the league. Now you hope it doesn't happen to your best player, but unfortunately for the Eagles it did, and it happened late in the week. So you got to scrap things and start over a little bit and say, because it's you're not a very good coach, and I don't think Kellen Moore would do this if you just say, all right, I'm going to put Devontae and AJ spot the game plan and just bump everybody up.
Yeah, I don't think Kellen's doing that.
No. So it's an issue. And from Atlanta's standpoint, they game planned for AJ Brown, so they had to ship, but it's a little bit easier for them because they don't have to deal with that particular player.
Yeah, no doubt. Definitely easier from the Falcons' perspective when you're talking about, we no longer have to worry about AJ Brown versus, now we have to game plan without him. So no doubt about it. I want to thank everybody for being here. Johnny, got two good chats I'm going to get to. You're going to like this one, Johnny Mac. Dank Bird Gang checks in, a member for 14 months. Look at that, my man. Appreciate you becoming a member. Everybody should become a member today if you're not already, because
125.
I think Saquon has that night tonight, everybody, whether John agrees or not. I think it's a Saquon night tonight. So if he goes over 125, we'll be giving away another jersey to a member. Dank says going to try to watch some of the game while at Monday Night Raw tonight. Shout out Johnny Mac. Johnny Mac, he knows you're a wrestling fan. He will be at the Raw.
Oh, where is Raw tonight? I should know, but
too consumed in the Eagles, Johnny Mac.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't blame him. I'll be DVRing Raw. I can't watch it, obviously, but
I don't know where it is. Let me see if I can find out real quick. Portland, Oregon. It's in tonight.
Wow. So we got Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll always DVR it, but yeah, I'm going to be kind of busy. Hopefully. Yeah. I won't be DVRing it tonight. I will say that, because I'll be in bed about 4 o'clock, and then we got a show at
8 a.m. Yeah, 8 a.m. sharp, baby. It's gonna be a long day for us on Birds 365, but I absolutely love it. Eagle season is here. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Good stuff there. Dank Bird Gang. Hope you have a great night, my man, at Raw. And thank you for the chat and for being a member for 14 months. James Carver, Johnny Mac checks in with $10. James, thank you, my man. Hope you had a great weekend. Thanks for being here on this Monday edition of the show. J-Mac, any change in opinion of early bye week with AJ? Also, do you see Shipley and his eye candy round C last week will now turn live this week, making for big games for Smitty, Dallas, Barkley, and Shipley? Start with the bye
I love
week,
James. I love James, but nobody cares about Will Shipley.
Yeah.
Now, occasionally, you can test the eye discipline with that's what you do. That's the point of a lot of motion. And yeah, I'm not saying there's not a player that might be distracted, Atlanta defensive player that might not be distracted on a particular play, on a particular motion play. It might even be Will Shipley, but nobody's concerned about Will. By the way, I think Will might be the kick returner, the main kick returner this week. We'll see how that shakes out. But come on. No. Now he used 21 personnel for basically one series, and is what James is referring to. But yeah, nobody's getting riled up because Will Shipley's on the field. Now, maybe he could force them, make a play or two, and then maybe they start paying attention. But I would say right now, a default setting, nobody's worried about Will Shipley just yet in the NFL.
John, thoughts on the bye week part of that question? Any change in opinion of early bye with AJ? I do think it's a good point when you talk about a hamstring. They linger. This is your top target on offense. Any change in your opinion on the bye might come in a weak time, or a good time, I mean?
No, because the bye is about the whole team. And later in the season, you're going to be banged up. I don't know who, I don't know when, I don't know what, but the later the bye, the better, because the more you play, the more guys you're going to have banged up.
Right.
Does it help for a specific one player in this instance? Maybe. And we still have to see if AJ's dealing with some tightness or he's got an actual hamstring strain. And if he's got an actual pulled hamstring, and it's going to be a multiple week injury, it'll help for one specific player, but you might have 3 players dealing with hamstrings later in the season, and ankles, and MCLs, and just banged up, and shoulders, and all of. So you'll never hear a coach talk about, I'd like an early bye. You always want the later bye because that's when you're going to be more banged up. So just from a general perspective, it's about more than one player, even a player as good as that.
John, no update yet on AJ, right, in terms of whether it was a tweak. I mean, they said he tweaked it or he felt tightness.
Felt tightness.
Is what
they
tightness
said.
on Friday, which like when we talked about it yesterday on our quick reaction video to AJ being out, but having a tight hamstring is a lot different than when you pull it or strain your hamstring.
Yeah.
I think if he strained it, this isn't going to be the only game he misses. So we'll be watching closely to see when we get the update on that. John, when do you think you'll learn more about that injury?
Well, I hope I see him tonight, and hopefully, but if not, probably not till. And they haven't put out the schedule, so it's a short week for them. So
yeah,
probably Wednesday will be the first status report. But I hope he's there. I mean, he'll certainly be there, but I hope he's in the locker room, just milling about, and maybe I'll get to talk to him a little bit tonight. But if not, probably not till Wednesday.
Yeah, so we'll see what they do this week. James, thank you for the super chat, and Dank Bird Gang, thank you for being a member for 14 months. Everybody got to check out that membership tonight. I think Saquon Barkley is going to go off, so we'll be seeing if he gets over 125. We'll be giving away another Saquon jersey this week. A great offensive breakdown there as Johnny Mac reacts and breaks down what he thinks this offense is going to look like now without A.J. Brown. When we come back from the break, we're going to get into the defensive side of the ball. Cooper DeJean, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, what their roles are tonight. I think that defensive line is a big role in slowing down this Atlanta offense. I think they are ripe right now with Kirk Cousins struggling to move in the pocket. There was some practice footage that came out last week. Kirk still doesn't look like he's moving great. So we'll talk about the defensive side of the ball after the break, and then we will also get into yesterday's NFL games. There were some good games, and I want to see what Johnny Mac's takeaways were from some of those games. So thanks, everybody, for being here. Stay tuned. Birds 365 will be back in 3 minutes.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.